everybody, we're back for the round 3 recap of the candidates, and let's go over the games. So the first game was between Gukesh and Jan Nepomniachtchi. The game was between leaders, and it features Catalan, the modern opening, which is very common these days, especially at the top level. Jan Nepomniachtchi actually played it quite a few games against Magnus Carlsen in the World Chess Championship match a couple of years ago. So they both know this opening really well. And c5. A little bit unusual. Usually black takes on c4 first and then plays c5. The c5 is an invitation to the Tarish sort of lines. Yeah, black takes on d5 with a pawn, then after knight c3 is definitely knight f3 is definitely Tarish. What black takes with a knight, which is pretty unusual, and knight f3 seems to be a normal response, although knight c3 is also possible, but if you play knight c3 then you have to be ready for stuff like this. Take, bishop b4 check, because if bishop d2 that runs into queen d4, and there's also rook hanging here at some point. But if you play king f1, that obviously white cannot really play for an advantage, because you're going to need to spend some time to either castle this king later or move the rook. So knight f3 is very logical. Black takes, which is logical too, because if knight c6, then just castles. So take, or castle first. Yeah, probably is not a big difference, because you're gonna take on d4 anyway next move. So the position is pretty much standard Catalan. White's bishop on g2 is very strong. The question is that black position is very solid and it's tough kind of to break. And also the big question for white is where to develop this knight on b1. Because in the Catalan the knight usually goes to knight d2, knight c4. But also sometimes knight c3, and white allows the creation of this weak pawn in order to open the file for the rook and for the bishop to put pressure on the black's queen side. The kind of surprising move the ancient suggests here is queen d2 with the idea of rook d1, and also to play knight c3 so you can recapture with the queen. This is a very odd move. I think knight b3, the game move, is very logical. And black plays bishop e7, the ancient suggests bishop b6, but for the human to play this move doesn't seem very natural, because white has access to knight c4 square, which is standard Catalan, and now he's attacking the bishop. And if black allows the trades, then white's pair of bishop gives him certain advantage, but if black plays bishop c7, bishop here is not standing really well, and white can just proceed with bishop d2, rook c1, potentially a3, and then even e4 and grab the center. So that's why black plays bishop e7. And yeah, I think e4 is the only move that gives me pause. I think bishop d2 with the idea of knight c3 and recapture of the bishop was very logical, but that would kind of lead to a lot of trades. And the question is, can really white expect any advantage here? And it's kind of a complicated question, because after queen b6, again, black uses the fact that knight in b3 is not that great, and black is ready to play rook d8, bishop d7, bishop e8, after which he'll be very comfortable. And we're entering this knight d4 move, which I find absolutely incredible. And the question is, what happens after rook d8, right? Very interesting. So take on e7, king f8, rook fd1, king e7, and now white goes into the tactical solution by playing bishop d4 with the idea of rook c1, bishop c5, cementing black queen sides sort of awkward positions, because they have to protect the pawns. So, but this should be pretty equal if black plays correctly. This was a very interesting line. Obviously, in the tournament hall, you have to rely on your own brains, and then e4 makes sense. White wants to get rid of this knight, create pressure, gain center space, very solid play. Knight b4, and if you look at the time, at this time black spent only 8 minutes, so this must have been already analyzed in the preparation by Jan. So once again, Jan demonstrates the importance of having a good preparation for this tournament, as the engine suggests that black has already equalized. I'm not sure black has already equalized, but it certainly looks okay here, especially now that the white's bishop is closed and knight has access to the d3 square. So, and knight on b3 is not that great, right? So knight c6, and I think this is very reasonable, but after this move, white cannot hope to get an advantage. The only way for white to play for an advantage, again, is not allow the queen trade. If black managed to do the queen trade, get into the endgame is just draw. So that's why the engine suggests queen h5. That's where you hide the queen, because if queen e2 runs into queen d3, and now queen h6, and because of this possibility that black king is a little bit weakened, white might hope for something, but I won't give it much. Yeah. Bishop e3, and black of course trades. Now is the big question how to play, and I'm a little bit surprised that Nepo plays this move. Knight c2, forcing the bishop from this great diagonal, or forcing the trade, would be probably the better way to equalize. After knight e5, he has the knight goes to c4, but other pieces they have to go back. So white has certainly some degree of an advantage here. f6 is played. Yeah, Nepo is usually very good in the end games. f6 is actually preparation to stop white's e5 and opening this bishop. It might come very, very important later. Now white is forced with this idea of playing rook f2, rook c2, or rook fe1, and he needs to get rid of this guy, because this guy takes away the square from the bishop, and you need this bishop here to hope for an advantage. So rook e1, rook here, bishop f1, knight d6, and this is slightly incorrect, but it's not bad. Still has some advantage for white, thanks to the lead in the development and awkward bishop on c8. But you really don't want to trade knights like this, because this knight is like really awkward. So I think bishop e3 should have been probably considered at least, and then the question with this knight, to put knight on d4, on d2 is a question. But okay, knight b5, white plays very solid, and I think white has serious advantage here. So the question is, you should not rush this position, You definitely should not rush in this position, because knight is placed perfectly, takes away the squares from this guy, and this guy is very awkward. So rook c1, king here, bishop here, create some pressure on this guy. He has nowhere to go. The only way to go is to go back, but if you go back, that's an awful square, disrupt coordination. So yeah, but Kukish was 29 minutes at this point, which should be plenty. Should be absolutely plenty. So the second game he should just play very slow. He plays knight c5 really fast, but Jan is also making mistakes. E5, knight e4, but that's kind of weak pawn. So rook d8 actually makes sense. Take, rook c1 looks good. Let's try this knight a6 and rook c6. So actually, Kukish is posing serious problems, and now black is forced to give up the bishop, and white has a pretty strong bishop pair. So the only thing now is how to play this position. The advantage is growing with each move. Kukish played this part extremely well. I haven't seen this game, so I'm actually going over this game with you guys. A4 seems very, very logical, with the idea of opening the bishop, creating an additional target, and potentially putting the bishop on this diagonal. A4 looks very good, and so does b4 actually. b4 to make sure these pawns are stuck on the light squares, the color of this bishop, so he can attack it later. And white can actually play at his leisure, because black is so very passive. So bishop b6, and this I really don't like, because after this black's task is made exponentially easier. As I mentioned many times in my stream, when you have a pair of bishops, and there is an option to keep the rook or to trade it. You should usually keep the rook because rook and two bishops is much stronger than the bishop, knight, and the rook. Because you know, they coordinate so well and they can create so many problems. So again, a4, now bishop c4 would be very, very strong, creating pressure on the pawn and the king. a4, I'm very surprised Gukic didn't play a4. But my understanding is that if you spend a lot of time on the openings and middle games, then your endgames kind of suffer because you don't spend as much attention. So rook d1, and after this, I think it's very hard for white to win this game because black will have to remaneuver his pieces and make sure that all weaknesses are protected. I don't even see weaknesses for black here. I really like bishop c8 to put the bishop on d7 just in case this pawn will be attacked, so it will be protected. But g6 is also okay, prepares for bishop b3, f5. And again, a4, you need to play a4, you need to work, you need to soften up this pawn structure and create targets. I really don't understand why Gukic is refusing to play this. Instead he plays academically and, oh, he plays a4 like this, but it's kind of too late now, yeah. The thing is, if you attack this pawn now, the knight counterattacks this guy. If b4, knight c4, even if you win this pawn, opposite color bishops, it's a draw. And if you take on b5, it's knight b3, knight d4, and black can even give up the pawn, because with the light squared bishops, the corner is of the opposite color, and black is gonna very likely to make an easy draw, actually. So f5 may be the only chance, but another perfect move. Yeah, fg6 is another inaccuracy by Gukic. But he has 3 minutes on the clock, he has to make time control, but you know, after bishop g4 there is no hope. Black is completely okay. And bishop e6 to make sure that you don't even have a chance to attack this guy. So knight king d2, b4. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And the game is a draw because there is no chance for white to make any improvement in this position. Knight is perfect protector. You cannot really leave with the bishop to attack it. The only way to do that is to play king c1, b2, but that leaves black with a lot of chances to actually go for the counterattack on the central pawn and activate the king. So, you know, it is a draw. So Gukic actually missed quite a few chances in this endgame. I spoke yesterday about how Naka, you know, after the painful loss, he needs to play very solid, you know, get that experience as far as possible from his mind. Now he plays black just to make solid draw, and he goes to play the Slav, and Abasov plays also very solidly because, you know, he knows he lacks the experience and Nakamura is like very strong player, plus Abasov has white, so they both decided to play solid today. Hence we have the Slav exchange variation, really well known for its drawish qualities. White plays again extremely solid, queen d2. Eventually there will be either mass exchanges on the c file, and this just, you know, a solid grandmaster draw. Yeah. All right. Fair result for both players who lost their games yesterday. So after today's rest day, tomorrow they'll have a chance to play for a good result, yeah, and try to change the course of the tournament. Yeah, this was a very interesting game, again, as we can expect from both Fabiano and Alireza. And it features yet another Salima, but this time it's more of an old line, which have been put into doubt by guys like Wesley So, who has a lot of great analysis here, which demonstrate problems for black, but it's very interesting what Fabi does here. Again, he is one of the leading experts in Rosalima, but so is Alirez's knowledge of Rosalima is also pretty strong. So the computer now suggests d4, but I don't really believe that. So the idea is that he takes from the pawn. Interesting, yeah. The computer suggests queen d6 followed by g6, bishop g7. but probably that runs into some difficulties after 94, castles, rook e1, I mean, 94, d4. You need to really like analyze this, and I suspect that Fabi analyzed it really well and he came to the conclusion that this is safer approach. And okay, so we are done with the opening. Now it's the transition from opening to the middle game, and the critical questions arise. Which structure white must play? If you play d5, try to block the position, because black has pair of bishops. It is logical to block the position. But then knight on c7 is perfectly placed for this Benoni type of a structure. Right, black is just gonna go prepare b6, a6, b5, and this pair of bishops is really will be doing great at controlling all the vital squares on the king side. So d5 is not really an option if white wants to play for an advantage. The other choice is to take on c5 and try to attack this guy so you can put this knight on d5 in the center. So that I think is pretty logical, but the problem with this is that after 96, you know, it will be an endgame, and in the endgame, pair of bishops is extremely strong. I mean, and the presence of this knight on a6, you know, takes care of this problem, and after black just finished the development, he is completely okay. So, dc5 is not an option, so that's why he plays bishop f4, creating this threat, taking on c5 and taking the queen. So if I place knight e6, checking where this bishop goes, and I'm pretty sure that I was out of the book here. Yeah, because the engine suggests you need to play bishop g3 if you want to play for an advantage, which makes a lot of sense. This bishop is very strong here, creates pressure on this pawn, but you need to calculate what happens after f5. Yeah, and as you can see, there are a lot of sharp lines here, which might potentially involve like sacrifices or something. Like here, f4, bishop f6, although you can take this stuff back, but there's also g5. Yeah, this is pretty wild. Without analysis, it's really not that great to go to this. So I can understand Ariza's decision to play bishop e3, but if you play bishop e3, then this gambit, psychological gambit by Fabiano, is paid off. Yeah, this bishop is not well placed here, and I don't think white can, you know, consider any fight for an advantage here. The only thing is this knight c7 is kind of probably not necessary. Really b6, bishop b7 to stop this knight d5. Create pressure and force white to do something. I think b6 was very logical. Because if d5, then you just go back. And black is completely okay. And if knight d5, again, bishop b7. And maximum white can do is probably this opposite colored bishop position, even if you take d5, knight c7, queen d7. This looks very drawish. There's no easy way for white to get to the only potential weakness that has, which is pawn on d6. And this bishop problem, again, might be potentially resolved by playing b5 and then later attacking this guy. Or if you want, you can just play rook e8, bishop c8, queen d8, and transfer this bishop here to the king side, try to trade this knight, and then you have knight and queen. Pawns are on the dark squares, but for the knight it doesn't matter. You know, if you have the black square bishop, then it's a problem. Yeah, but the knight, he can hop all over the place. Yeah, the computer says actually advantage white, but I kind of disagree with this statement. Alright, so, but okay, also I'm pretty sure Fabi analyzed this. So knight c7 back, he's like saying, I don't want to give you I'm not going to give you any inch of this position. So bishop g4 is coming, now white has to solve the problem. The only thing is, compared to the 2 moves ago, right, the bishop is on c1, and now you have bishop on e3. So white kind of gained the tempo. So that's why I don't like knight c7, because now the bishop on e3 is definitely better than on c1. Rooks are connected. White can try to go for the central pressure, because there are some problems with this queen on d8. It's not easy to develop, especially white puts the rook here. So the only thing I can think of, like maybe queen d7, queen c6, but then you have to calculate d5 also with rook on e1. this bishop will be under pressure. So h3 is very logical. Bishop f5, again very logical, developing the bishop, taking some squares under control. Rook e1. Now rook e8. Yeah, it's very reasonable, protecting the bishop. The bishop can go to f8, to f6, completing the development. Queen b3 looks normal, but queen d2 is played. And the way I think queen b3 is better is because, again, this puts the pressure on the black queen, and you have to do something about it, yeah? Because if you play queen c8, now you can play bishop f4, the bishop can retreat to h2, and now this pawn is kind of weak. So black is a little bit worse here. He plays queen d2, and now Fabi plays immediately d5. I suspect it's also part of the ideas that he is familiar with in his analysis. According to the ancient, this is clear equalization. So let's check the statements. c4, correct, not giving the pawn. Bishop f4, take rook e5, bishop is... he takes on c3 first. Apparently bishop e6 is also playable. Yeah, undoubtedly bishop g5 to trade the bishops, eliminate pair of bishops for black. And then you really had to calculate this, yeah? But I think it's a little bit better for white. That's why Fabi didn't play it. Yeah, because the bishop here and the pawn here, it doesn't look that great. I mean, it's okay. Rook here, with the idea of, you know, 95, creating pressure on these guys. Like rook c8, 95, rook d6, and then you have another 94 coming. Yeah, this might be a problem for black. So maybe that's why he decided to take on c3 first, and just to keep... you must take the queen, because otherwise it's just queen d7. So queen d7, take rook c8 first. So what do we have here? We have this endgame where black has pair of bishops, white has extra pawn, but it's fully compensated by active bishops. Also, black has access to the c file. It looks like black should not have a problem making a draw here at all. Knight on f3, especially in this position, is not great. Yeah, and this pawn is easily targetable. Yeah, yeah, definitely it looks like a draw. So d5. This is just a move that says that, okay, I understand it's a draw. I don't want to waste time, you know, trying to prove that's not a draw. Okay, so let's just trade stuff. And okay, bishop e6, very interesting. Expected rook d8, to be honest. Yeah, eliminating the active rook, but bishop e6 is also okay. Okay, he did it this way, same idea. a3, so the rook can finally leave, but h6. Okay, Fabiano has one of the best techniques in the world, so let's see what he does. White plays correctly, transfers the bishop, fully protected, extra pawn is protected. However, you know, the pawns are made to be pushed. If you just protect them and you don't push them, then, you know, extra it doesn't matter. So bishop c5, black starts to, you know, put his bishops to work. The only thing is this bishop, like where does he belong? It's not. Pretty sure black wants to trade the rooks, because then it's very easy draw. The reason it's easy, because black will have much easier time after centralizing the king to trade his bishop for this knight, and then make absolutely easy draw with the opposite color bishops endgame. All right. So, and again, we have this same idea: two bishops and a rook versus knight, bishop, and a rook. All right. Fantastic. Oh, he doesn't even trade it. Oh, black is playing for a win? No, not playing for a win. Okay, but he was concerned that because with the king is on h7, if he takes, white king might be a little bit very fast here, and then pushing the pawns. Yeah, it's still draw, but okay. Yeah, if you can play rook d1 here, white must play this and go back. Yeah, this rook is extremely well placed. If you cannot dislodge this rook, also you can't push the pawns. That means white cannot make progress. and you cannot push any of these guys because, you know, they're always under fire. Yeah? The biggest problem is this bishop. It's uncontested. And if you try to put the bishop on a3, then this bishop goes back and hits these guys. Yeah. All right, that's a good draw. Very, very solid draw. And we have last game, which was the only decisive game of the round, but it was critically important because the day before, Prague lost to Gukic and Vidit beat Naka, right? So Vidit was in the lead, and now Prague actually caught up with him and brought him back to earth. Yeah, this is kind of amazing. You know, we have so many Indian players on these candidates, and there's this rivalry going on. Yeah, it's not just like who wants to be challenger for the world title, but there's also a rivalry, like who's the best Indian player. So sometimes, you know, they hold each other back. Yeah, it actually is kind of weird if you think about it. So this is improved Steinitz. Very unusual choice by Prague, but it appears that he prepared a lot of unusual lines for this event, which is great. Some of them work, some of them didn't, but this is extremely interesting. I'm pretty sure Vidit is now here on his own, but he plays d4, which I think is a principal move. So, to be honest, I expected fe4, but after knight e5, knight f6, you know, White's position is undoubtedly better, okay? So fe4 is definitely not the move, so ed4 makes a lot of sense. And now White has to do what to do with this pawn. He plays e5, seems to be correct. b5, and Black goes after this bishop. This is very important. If White is allowed to keep this bishop, then all these weaknesses, they are exposed and White has a huge advantage. But if Black managed to trade this bishop, then it becomes like sort of a weird dodge, and this bishop becomes very, very active. So this is very interesting position. Knight d4, queen d4. Okay, I think knight d4 is reasonable, and bishop b7. Wow, Black just, you know, doesn't care about this pawn. He wants to finish the development, trade this bishop, cast alongside. Yeah, I still think White is better, but now this knight f5 looks to be very optimistic. Very, very optimistic. Yeah, I would probably consider a more safe approach, but you have to calculate obviously stuff like c4, which is pretty dangerous obviously. With the king open like this, checks, queen g4, there is compensation. So Black must probably play like knight b3, a b3, and then do something about this pawn. Yeah, because if you play g6 and knight f5 anyway, right? That's the problem. Check, and you lose the queen. So you cannot protect pawn like this. The only way to protect it is by playing knight e7, or you play active spielen, you play queen h4. And the idea is you play queen e4 here. Then Black is better. So a lot of tactics here, a lot of tactical resources after knight c3. Now you can have queen g4, because the queen trade obviously favors the side that is experiencing difficulty, plus the endgames. Pair of bishops is good. Queen g6, and this is a huge mess, but I think White should be a little bit better, because his pawn structure is better. Knight's semi-closed position, knight's a little bit better than a semi-closed position. And if Black castles queenside, there is potential attack. Again, very complicated. Pretty sure Vidit was out of his book here, so he decides to play knight f5. But that kind of reminds me of that crazy Naka knight takes e5 against Vidit when Vidit made novelty in the game, right? Remember, Naka played knight e5, active move, and then he lost. This looks like kind of similar decision, yeah? There's a little deja vu here. And d6, if you look at the time, this is probably all preparation, because you don't play d6 and you go into this line if you don't analyze it, yeah, for sure. And after d6, actually, according to the computer, Black is completely okay. Completely okay. Thanks to this powerful bishop. And Vidit plays queen e2, tries to keep the pawn and create some threats at the same time. Interesting play. Queen d7. Who cares about this check, right? Because after king f7, the rook is coming. And if the knight has to go to e3, then this is like, will be the saddest knight in the world. extremely passive, but you have to do it, yeah? You gotta do it. Bishop d6, castles, probably knight f6. I'm not sure why knight goes to e7. Okay, knight goes to e7 because in the future knight can go to g6, f4. So what we're looking at is the analogy to the Marshall Gambit, which is actually a great analogy for black because all his pieces are already at the right spots. All he needs to do is to bring in the rook, and white pieces are way worse than in the Marshall attack. Okay, yeah, like rook e8, rook e5, rook h5 is coming. A lot of things are coming. Definitely black is okay here. So I would say that queen e2 was definitely probably not correct. So he plays e6, and after queen c6, now there's a dilemma what to do. Yeah, he plays bishop g5, but you know, when I saw the game, I couldn't understand why f3 is so bad. Because to me, this is a very natural move. Stop this, close the bishop, right? Take the square away. Pretty sure it would be the knight e7 or castle, right? But if you castle, you see the evaluation, right? It just immediately goes up. Either knight c3, knight d4, you know, black needs a lot of time to recapture the pawn. In the meantime, white will castle. He will, you know, defend this pawn, provoke some pawn pushes, create some squares for his knights. I think it's just advantage for white. It's very interesting that the computer doesn't actually even consider this move. I don't understand. Unless you play this move, the engine doesn't even look at it. Yeah. Okay, knight e7 is probably the best. Yeah. Knight e7 is probably the best, and then we have a choices. Yeah. Queen d3, knight g3 is like a whole analysis. Because it's a recap, I'm not going to go into this. I'll leave it to the analytics. But it definitely was something that should have been considered. So bishop g5. So the big question, right? The obvious question, what is going on after this? And what is going on after this is black gets mated. All right? So that is an indirect protection of this pawn. However, after g6, knight has to go back, and you must protect this pawn. So he managed to get his bishop out before the knight closes everything, right? But now, look at this position. There is no way white is better now. There is no way. Very strong bishop, this pawn will be gone. After that, this is very sad knight. So, a fantastic prep by Prague leads him with advantage in the opening against one of the greatest opening specialists. An amazing piece of preparation. So, Vidit is now trying to make a fight for the control of some squares for the knight on d5, but b4, very accurate. It's very important not to allow white knight on d5, and then black just wants to play bishop g7, and then either short castle or long castle. And then rooks go into the center, and again, this knight on e3 is the very sad knight. So, queen g4. The idea is to play knight d5, yeah? Knight d5 and attack this guy. So black must do something. Queen c5. Now the bishop is controlling the square. Also queen is able to move into the center or to the king side. So castles, bishop g7, and black is better. Structurally, all his pieces are better. Pair of bishops, white's knights are sad. So, and the only thing is like this move. Yeah, there was no actually need probably to play this sharp. Yeah, just short castle is also probably sufficient. And then you go and grab this pawn on e6 at some point, and then convert try to convert the bishop's advantage. But this move is like, you know, very, very sharp. Now this is very double-edged position, and I'm surprised that Vidit didn't play knight e5 here, because knight e5 you must play in this position. Obviously, if you take like this, the tactics should be good for white. Yeah, the tactics should be good for white because of the spin, because also this pawn is very strong. Potentially knight c4, b6, followed by rook c1 and queen d7. Yeah. So you must play knight d5 in this position just for practical reasons, because your knight is terrible. This is excellent blockade. You need to remove this piece. If black doesn't take it, he must take with the bishop, but then look at this position. The C file is opened, the A pawn is weak. You just traded your important, you know, defender, king. You know, black is just lost here. So that's why I was very surprised, you know, Vidi didn't play it. Partially because you can't really play moves like this, because bishop e3 and knight b4 and queen is trapped. So this was a big moment. Vidi thought for whole 2 minutes here. This is absolutely critical position, guys. You know, you have to identify critical positions in your games. And then once you identify it, you really need to invest time to think and try to figure out the correct path to go. Yeah. So he missed 95 and now white missed his golden chance to actually win the game. So he plays h4, but this move gives black respite. Yeah. Rook e8 is possible, also very logical, protecting the knight, attacking this pawn. Rook d1, white just playing common sense moves. Yeah, he plays moves like, you know, putting the rooks on the open central files. That's what he does. Black just grabs the pawn. Okay, free pawn, and now he plays knight d5, but it's kind of late. All right, it's kind of late because yeah, because you know, rook is on e8, king is gone, bishop takes away the square. Black's pair of bishops is full defense against any possible white attack here. White can not possibly attack black king at all. The pawn chain, pair of bishops, passive pieces for white. Actually, white is in danger of being attacked, like at some point g5, opening the h file, potential rook sacrifices, potential even endgame followed by the 4 pawns going versus 1 on the queen side. You know, strategically speaking, white is lost. Okay, so he's trying his best now to try to muddy the waters, complicate the game, but it should not really work. But yeah, you know, Pragg plays this very dynamically, and then, you know, his nature really sometimes goes beyond his control. Yeah, he plays this very solid move. Yeah, this is kind of funny, man. Yeah, he's trying to play dynamic chess, and then he produces a move like rook g8. Yeah, this is like really weird combination. Yeah, because rook h7 makes more sense. Yeah, you attack hit the pawn, activate the rook goes to the 4th, hits absolutely everything here, right? Then you just push the pawn or something. I mean, it's not a bad move, but you know, it is a surprise. This is an unfortunate move. White missed the chance to play knight a3 here. Or did he? Yeah, just queen b7. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, so maybe it's still bad for black, for white. Yeah, because knight e3, bishop e7. Yeah, okay. So at this point, probably doesn't matter. Black has a huge advantage regardless of how he plays. Bishop e7. Again, bishops now firing the white king from afar. The pawn is gone. G5, g4 is coming. Yeah. So actually, rook g8 is not that bad. You know. Takes the pawn, again very solid, knight a5, try to get rid of this bishop, and yeah, I thought g5 immediately and try to push the pawn. Also even bishop a8 could be considered, but rook d4 is coming. Rook d4 is coming, okay, that's what he was worried about. Yeah, but if white is allowed to, yeah, why he didn't take here? Why you don't take this bishop, man? Okay, take. Okay, black has 5 versus 4. Okay, black is a pawn up, yeah? His king is safe and he can potentially hold an attack, so still advantage for black. Besides, the rook goes to b5 and hits this guy. Still advantage, but, you know, without that bishop, white task is a little bit easier, yeah? So, he plays b4 first, g5, h5. Yeah, but now now this move has to be played. Yeah, you need to keep this bishop alive. I mean, all you have to do to know about this position is go and look at the game Topalov versus Anand, 12th game of their match. Topalov also went like with white, with the knight like on the side of the board, going somewhere, leaving his king alone, and Vishnyan just, you know, used his bishop to go and kill Topalov's king. That was an incredible game. I couldn't believe, you know, why would somebody of level of Topalov, you know, play like this, yeah? It's crazy. So, g4, rook e1, g3, opening the king, obviously grab, queen b7, and now this position, yeah, is +5 for black. Yeah, rook g5, the easiest thing to do. After the queen trades, rook endgame is completely lost for white. Grab here, rook h4, very solid, rook g5, yeah, just grab this pawn, and then you have 3 versus 1, and it's an easy win, yeah. Check, and white resigns. Because after king moves, you trade the last rook, you play a5, and it's 2 pawns. Yeah. Yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, Vidit, it looked like Vidit had very bad experience in this game, except he had that moment, remember? When Prague went long castle. That was the moment that Vidit had. All he had to do was to find knight d5 move, which he didn't. And because of the threat of bishop e3, trapping the queen, black must do something about this guy. And then we run into this, and this is a completely different picture. You have rook here, knight c4. Okay, so let's take a look. Yeah, queen d5. So I'm thinking rook e1 first, or knight c4. Yeah, the computer really likes knight c4 first. I'm wondering why rook e1 is not so great. And then knight c4, so queen f5. And okay, there are no threats, yeah, no threats. Queen f6, bishop d4. So if you play knight c4 immediately, what is the difference? Queen f5, queen g3. The difference is that you want to take on d6 and take with a knight, yeah. So this pawn is kind of in danger. So you cannot really play bishop d4. That's the difference. And you cannot play rook e8, yeah. Same idea. And also rook e7 also runs into the same thing. Even if you don't take this bishop, you know, then it just continues on this theme of the fork. So you need to really run with your king. But if you run with your king, the problem is that there's still sacrifices coming here, because you cannot comfortably capture this guy. Amazingly as it sounds, this pawn is like very safe, yeah. Pretty safe pawn. Take, rook d6. And now the biggest problem is this king, because if king runs here, queen d3, mate. Thanks to this pawn, which is like really cutting black board in half, and this bishop, which also cuts board in half, yeah. That's the standard theme in a lot of chess openings. White sacrifices stuff, but he gets either the pawn or the bishop here, which cuts black coordination. And then, no matter how many extra pieces this size has, white has more in the attack on the half of the board, yeah, because the other half does not participate. So, yeah, I'm very surprised Vidit didn't go for this. Very, very surprised. It's a big chance he missed, which he will probably, you know, remember for a long time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the last 4 game of the round 3 of the candidates. Today they have the rest day. Tomorrow we have the matchups Nakamura versus Prague. Prague is playing second game with black, but because they have rest day, this is Naka's chance to come back. He plays white. He needs to prepare, and he definitely his chance. Nepo playing white against Vidit. Another important meeting, because Vidit is very dangerous, and having this extra day of prep, I don't know, it favors more. I think it favors Vidit actually more, because he lost this painful game with white. So this rest day is actually very good for him. And but it's okay for Nepo also. Nepo won the candidates like 2 times. The guy is like really knows ins and outs of the candidate tournaments of this format. He figured out his best parts, how to win this. The other guys, you know, they still have to figure it out. The other guy is Fabiano Caruana with white versus Gukish. Extremely important game. As we know, Gukish is going on +1. He had a big chance yesterday to beat actually Jan in that game. He posed serious problems, but then he went really way too solid. And yeah, you need to take some risks. It wasn't actually a risk. I don't understand why he didn't play a4, but I can tell you that I thought that Gukish, one of the weak points of his game, he's very strong in dynamic positions, his theory is good, but his endgame is a little bit off, you know, not at the level of his way it should be. So that's his only weakness. All right, so Fabi it's a good chance for Fabi. He is also +1. If he beats Gukish, then Fabi will be a clear favorite to win the tournament. And then we have Abbasov versus Adreza game, and anything goes, yeah, absolutely anything. Abbasov hasn't shown some great chess still in this tournament, and it's about time to start showing chess because it's already round 4. The total amount of rounds in the whole tournament is 14. After this game, it's almost the third part of the tournament is over. Yeah, you need to start doing something. Also, a chance for Alireza to. It's again, there's a lot of psychology, right? Because everybody knows Alireza needs to win. So Abbasov knows that too. So it means that Alireza, even if he's playing black, he's going to try to take some risk. Yeah. So Abbasov might just as well, you know, play very solid and wait for the risk from Alireza, and then try to consolidate on that and make mistakes and win. Yeah. Yeah. Again, very interesting. I don't know, but this is tomorrow's the day when Naka and has to win to get any chance of winning this event. Nepo is very comfortable situation. Fabiano is pretty comfortable, but Alireza needs to win as well. Yeah. So let's see who is trailing who. What are the results? Who is leading? So again, Gukish is leading +1 along with Jan and Fabiano. I'm very glad for Gukish. Vidit is 50%, thanks courtesy to his loss versus Prague. So Prague also caught up with 50%. Then we have guys with -1, which are Alireza, Naka, and Abbasov. So Naka is -1. Again, but with the level of preparation he's shown in this tournament, I'm not surprised. Yeah, I don't think he deserves to win the candidates with this level of prep. And that the results actually show that. Alireza probably prepared. He looks good, but he's missing stuff. Yeah, his tactics, he's blundering stuff, and he's making misjudgment calls. That tells you that, you know, last year he didn't play a lot of tournaments. That actually shows. You know, you need that board experience. You need to play games. You need to feel the pieces. If you don't play for a long time, then you suddenly, you know, come back and try to play. Yeah, it still shows. Yeah. All right. So, gentlemen, this was the recap for the round 3, and later today we'll do the simul in about 2.5 hours from now. The standard weekly Sunday simul for my Twitch subscribers. So I'll see you guys then, and enjoy the recap.